Apartment 20F was supposed to be empty, but every night I heard footsteps, drama, mystery story. They told me apartment 20F had been vacant for nearly a year, which I found hard to believe considering the creaks and knocks I kept hearing from inside it. The building itself wasn't new. Built in the early 1950s, all concrete bones and narrow staircases that echoed like cathedrals. But there was something about 20F that felt wrong from the start. The door was painted the same dull beige as the others, but its knob was newer, sheenier, like someone had replaced it recently and no one else got the memo. I lived in 2DD just down the hall, and my unit was as normal as one could hope for in a place like this. Scuffed parquet floors, paper-thin walls. Radiators that banged like they were still mad about the war. But that hallway between my apartment and 2F? It changed things. It felt charged, like static lingered in the air, and whenever I walked through it, my phone would lose signal for those 3 or 4 crucial seconds. I tested it dozens of times. No bars in front of 2F, full bars everywhere else. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. But I did believe in patterns, and that hallway was all wrong. The first week after I moved in, I heard footsteps coming from 2F every night at 11:22 p.m. Not a minute earlier or later. Always the same cadence, 3 steps, pause, then 1 slow drag. I'd stare at my ceiling from my bed, eyes locked on the plaster cracks as if they were fault lines about to break. At first I thought it was plumbing or maybe echoes from another unit, but no one else on the floor heard it. I asked. I made it seem casual, like I was just trying to get familiar with the building. The woman in 20C gave me a look that lasted too long and ended too quickly, like she was thinking something she didn't want to say. "Oh, that old place," she muttered. "No one's been in there for months. Don't pay it any mind." But how do you not pay mind to footsteps in an empty apartment? Or to the way my cat refused to walk past that door, instead sitting rooted at the end of the hall, tail flicking, ears pointed, waiting for something I couldn't see. The building manager, Curtis, wasn't much help either. I caught him once in the stairwell and asked who lived in 20F. He squinted at me like he'd misheard, then chuckled. "Nobody. Least, not lately. Some old guy lived there before you moved in. Died in hospice." I asked if anyone had moved in since. He shook his head. "Nah, been empty, though." His voice trailed off, and he scratched the side of his neck like he'd remembered something he didn't want to. "Never mind. You settling in okay?" That was always the end of the conversation. Curtis never liked lingering, especially not on the second floor. He did maintenance for the whole building, but if you needed him in 20F's hallway, he always had something else to do. But it wasn't just the footsteps. That would have been too easy. It was the smell. Not constant, not even nightly, but sometimes. Especially after midnight or during storms, the hallway would reek of something chemical, like scorched bleach or melted plastic. The kind of smell that sticks to your sinuses. The first time I noticed it, I thought maybe someone had burned something. But the second time I woke up to it, it wasn't just outside my door. It was inside. I got up, checked the stove, the outlets, even sniffed my cat, thinking maybe she'd knocked something over. Nothing, but when I opened the front door, the hallway was thick with it. Not smoky. Just wrong. No alarms went off. No one else came out. Just me in boxers and a hoodie, standing in the hallway with that smell coating my teeth. And right then, 2F's doorknob turned. I didn't see the door open. That's what haunts me. I didn't hear it either. But the knob moved, just a quarter turn, like someone on the other side was checking if it was locked. I froze. Couldn't even breathe. My brain fired off all the usual excuses. Maybe it was the building shifting, maybe someone really did live there, maybe it was maintenance. But I knew better, because a second after the knob turned, it slowly rotated back. Not fast, not jerky, just deliberate, like whatever was inside had changed its mind. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with the lights on, TV playing some documentary I never absorbed. My cat stayed under the bed. The next morning, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was overtired. But I bought a camera anyway, one of those cheap motion sensors you can stick to your door. I didn't want to spy on 20F. I just wanted to know if it moved again. I set it up that evening, angled to catch the hallway from inside my door peephole. If anything moved out there, I'd know. I went to bed with a knot in my stomach, convinced I wouldn't sleep. But I did. Heavy, dreamless, until a sharp buzz woke me at 3:14 a.m. The camera had picked something up. My heart was pounding before I even sat up. I opened the app, thumb trembling against the screen, and watched the playback. The hallway was empty. The timestamp said 3:11. No footsteps. No shadows, just a glitchy second around 3:12 when the feed pixelated and froze, and for a blink, barely a frame. I thought I saw something, a shape, human-sized, close to the camera, too close. But when I paused and rewound, it was gone, replaced by static. I checked the camera that morning. Battery was full, memory card intact, no signs of tampering, just that corrupted frame. I uploaded it to my laptop and zoomed in frame by frame until I found it again. Less than half a second. A shoulder. A face. Nope, something wrong. It looked too symmetrical, like a mask. I shut the laptop and didn't touch it for 2 days. I considered telling someone, but what would I say? That the empty apartment next to mine had a door that turned on its own and cameras that caught shapes that couldn't be explained. This wasn't a horror movie. I had a job, bills, a life to maintain. But still, I started avoiding that hallway. I'd take the stairs instead of the elevator just to come up from the other side. I even thought about moving. But that's when I met the woman in 2B. She introduced herself while we were both getting our mail. Name was Kali. Mid-30s, friendly enough, but with a distracted kind of smile, like she wasn't entirely there. I don't remember how we got on the subject of 20F. Maybe I brought it up. Maybe she did. But I do remember her face when I asked if she ever heard noises. Her smile dropped. "You mean the dragging?" she asked. My blood ran cold. She mimicked the exact rhythm I'd been hearing for weeks. 3 steps. Pause. Drag. Her voice was flat. "You're not the first to hear it. That place has been weird since before I moved in. Everyone says it's nothing. Curtis won't talk about it. And 2C. She acts like it's contagious. You should be careful." I asked what she meant by that. She just shook her head. "Some doors aren't meant to open. Some people don't come back out." I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. I barely worked. I barely ate. I started listening for it every night, that rhythm, and sometimes, God help me, I moved closer to the door. Once I put my ear against it. There was breathing, soft, not quite human, like someone exhaling through a flute. I jerked away so fast I fell into the opposite wall. My shoulder was bruised for a week, but I kept doing it, kept coming back to that hallway, drawn like something inside me wanted to be let in. I started dreaming of the hallway, of being inside 20F, always dark, always cold. But in the dream, it wasn't empty. There were shelves, hundreds, lined with objects that looked like teeth. No roots, just smooth rows arranged like books, and every time I tried to leave, the door would vanish. I'd wake up sweating, mouth dry, fingers curled into fists so tight my nails cut my palms. The dreams started coming every night, and that's when I knew whatever was inside 20F wasn't content staying there. It wanted out. Or worse, it wanted me in. I started leaving the lights on in every room. Even when I wasn't home, I'd let them burn, like some unspoken rule dictated that brightness could keep things out. Or at least distracted. But deep down, I knew whatever was inside 2EF didn't care about light. It had been there long before bulbs and wiring. It had lived in shadows long before the hallway was even built. I started researching the building's history, not out of curiosity but desperation, like I was trying to solve an equation where the unknown was eating away at the rest. The records were sparse, scattered across dusty microfilms and half-scanned PDFs at the local library. Originally called the Marrowell Arms, the building had been erected in 1953, meant for military families post-war. But the second floor in every blueprint I found was marked with inconsistencies. Odd spacing, doorways that didn't align, square footage that didn't add up. More than once, I found a blank space where 20F should have been, labeled simply as utility or reserved. One name kept coming up, though: Elwin Harrow, an engineer who worked on the original plans, then disappeared halfway through construction. No obituary, no records, just gone. And his last correspondence, a note found in the basement boiler room where the maintenance files used to be stored. The note said, "We shouldn't have sealed it. If it wakes up, we have no key." I found that quote in a footnote, attached to an old housing complaint by someone in Tweesey back in 1974. I started pacing in my apartment like a trapped animal. I couldn't sleep, couldn't sit still. I began hearing the dragging step at other times, random hours, like it was testing my attention span. Once it happened at 4:47 in the afternoon. I was brushing my teeth. I dropped the toothbrush into the sink, foam splattering, and stood frozen as it passed 3 steps. Pause. Drag. Then silence. Curtis stopped showing up, at least on my floor. I'd catch glimpses of him outside, near the garbage bins or maintenance shed, but if he saw me coming, he'd turn fast and vanish. I left him a note under the office door. It was returned 2 days later, folded and untouched, with no markings. It was a message, just not one written in ink. The tenants on the second floor started thinning out. One day the blinds in 2C were gone. The next, the mailbox in 20E was taped shut. Callie from 2B moved out overnight, left a note under my door that just said, "Do you unfollow it?" That was thing more. I went over that sentence again and again as if some code was hidden inside. But it was clear. Whatever was, it had a path, a trail, and she thought I might walk it next. The hallway got colder, not in a metaphorical sense. I mean physically cold. The thermostat would read normal, but stepping into that corridor outside my door was like stepping into a freezer. My breath would fog. My cat would hiss. And more than once, the light above 20F flickered and burst, leaving that part of the hall in darkness for days until someone fixed it. But no one ever came to fix it. The bulb would just reappear, lit. Not new, no. The same old dull orange glow humming like a tired wasp. And still the doorknob turned, at least once a week, usually between 3 and 4 a.m. A low metallic click. No footsteps before, no footsteps after, just the knob. And then came the knocking. It started soft, like a nervous visitor. One knock, long pause. Then two. As if it wanted to see if I would answer. But I didn't. I never did. I sat on the floor inside my door with a bat in hand, sweating through my shirt, every muscle in my body clenched. The knocks never came while I was sleeping. They came when I was alert. Awake. Listening. Like it wanted me to hear. Like it wanted to remind me that it knew I was there. The neighbors acted like nothing was happening. The remaining ones, anyway. I tried to talk to Mr. Gelman from 2A once, an older man who always wore slippers outside. When I mentioned the sounds, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're not the first." I asked him what that meant. He closed his door in my face. The next day, his unit was empty. I bought salt. A dumb, desperate thing to do, I know. But I was ready to try anything. I poured a thick line of it across my doorway and windows. I even circled my bed with it. For a while, it gave me peace. For a week, no knocks, no footsteps. Just the hum of the old fridge and the creak of my ceiling fan. I thought maybe the salt had worked. Maybe it had fooled whatever was out there into thinking I wasn't home. But on the 8th night, the salt line by my front door was broken. Not scattered. Broken. Like a single finger had traced through it from one end to the other. That night the knock came again, 3 times. Slow, deliberate, followed by something worse. It spoke. Not words. Not at first. More like a breath pushed through rust. A kind of clicking whisper, like something trying to imitate human speech with lungs full of dust. I backed away from the door, phone in hand, and recorded it. But in the morning, the audio was blank. Just silence. No clicks. No knocks. Nothing. I played it for hours, turning the volume up so loud the speaker cracked. I thought maybe there'd be something hidden in the white noise. But all I got was a nosebleed and a migraine that wouldn't go away for days. I made a mistake. I left a letter at 20F. I don't even remember writing it. But one morning I woke up and saw the envelope lying in front of my door with my own handwriting on the front. It said, "I hear you. That's all." And taped to the back was a Polaroid. I don't own a Polaroid camera. The photo showed my apartment. From the ceiling, from above my bed, I'm in the photo asleep. The timestamp is 3:12 a.m. I tore the photo in half and flushed it down the toilet. The next morning, there were 2 more photos, both of me. One brushing my teeth, one sitting at the kitchen table. Different angles. Higher up, I looked for cameras, searched every vent, every corner, tore apart smoke detectors. Nothing. And still, the photos kept coming. Then came the letter, slipped under my door like mine had been. But this wasn't written by me. The handwriting was uneven, almost childlike. It said, "Ya los tiendio se do dogo bu kami," no return address, no signature. Just those 3 lines. That night, I bolted my door and shoved a chair beneath the knob. I didn't sleep. I didn't even close my eyes. Around touch 40, the lights dimmed. Just for a moment. Long enough for my cat to yowl and bolt under the couch. And then, like clockwork, the knob turned. But not mine. 2 Fs. And this time, it opened. I didn't see what was inside. I couldn't. The hallway light above 20F flickered and died in the same breath, casting the whole corridor in darkness. But I saw a shape. A silhouette. Something standing in the doorway. Not moving. Not entering. Just watching. I closed my eyes. Counted to 100. When I looked again, the door was shut. But the hallway was colder than it had ever been. My skin hurt from the chill. And the next morning, my front door was unlocked. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't moved. I stopped eating. Couldn't keep anything down. My apartment smelled wrong, like that burnt chemical odor had seeped into the walls. Even the floorboards looked warped. I tried sleeping at a friend's place for a night. It helped. Dreamed. No knocks. But when I returned, my bed was soaked. Not water. Something darker, sticky. My camera had melted. Literally warped, like it had been in an oven. I didn't own candles, but wax was pooled on my nightstand, and scratched into my mirror, faint but unmistakable, were 3 words, YOUAR. Next, I tried to leave. Packed a bag, called a rideshare, waited outside. The car never came. When I checked the app, the address was wrong. It had sent the driver to another city. I tried again. Another driver, same result. I walked to the bus stop. Waited. No bus arrived. I checked the schedule. All routes were suspended due to technical issues. I walked back, and the hallway was darker than I remembered. The bulb above 20F was gone now. Just an empty socket sparking faintly. The doorknob wasn't shiny anymore. It was blackened, charred, like it had been through fire. I stood there, watching it, waiting for it to move. But this time, it didn't need to. Because I did. I don't remember taking the first step toward 20F, only the weight of it. As if my legs weren't mine, as if the air had thickened just enough to resist me but not stop me. The door wasn't open. It didn't need to be. It waited. That's what I kept telling myself. The way the light failed just in front of it, the way shadows folded around the frame, like the hallway itself curved slightly toward the threshold. I stood there for I don't know how long. My hand reached for the knob not because I wanted to, but because the silence demanded it. Everything else, my apartment, my name, the outside world, seemed absurd at that moment, distant, like memories from a life I only read about. The moment my fingers grazed the knob, a vibration traveled up my arm. Not strong, subtle, like holding a living wire buried in skin. Not electrical, like a heartbeat. Not mine. I told myself I wouldn't turn it. I told myself I was stronger than that. But the knob turned itself. Smooth, quiet, deliberate. The click echoed into my chest. I should have run. I should have screamed. But I only opened the door inch by inch, as the smell of cold metal and burnt sugar hit me like a wave. Not sweet, artificial, like something pretending to be comfort. Inside, the apartment was impossibly dark despite the open door. Not dark. Like color had been scraped out of the air. I stepped in. There was no sound, not even the thrum of the city outside. The air pressed against my ears like I was underwater. The floor beneath my feet didn't creak, it pulsed. The living room, or what I assumed was the living room, was empty, not abandoned, not messy, just wrong. The dimensions didn't feel real. Corners seemed too sharp. The walls leaned inward. The far end of the room was swallowed by shadows that no light touched. I moved further in, though every cell in my body screamed to stop. Behind me, the door closed. There was no furniture except for one chair in the center of the room. An old wooden thing, legs too long, back too high, like it had been stretched. On the seat was a single item, a cassette recorder, the kind with buttons you had to press hard. I stared at it, waiting for something to happen, but it didn't move. Didn't play. So I pressed the button. The voice that came through wasn't mine. Wasn't anyone's I recognized. It whispered. He watched the wall until it blinked, and then it watched back. A pause. Then, this is how you disappear, one corner at a time. I dropped the recorder. It hit the floor without a sound. The carpet absorbed it. Only, there hadn't been a carpet a second ago. I was sure of it. I looked down and the entire floor was now wrapped in a faded pattern of interlocking hexagons. Moving slightly. Breathing. The walls were closer. I turned to leave. But the door wasn't there. Just a flat surface where it had been. Smooth. Seamless. My hand scrambled across it, trying to find a handle, a line, a crack. Nothing. I was sealed in. That's when the hallway began. Not behind me. Not beside me. Beneath me, the floor opened like paper peeling back, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. The smell intensified. Plastic, copper, rot. My legs moved. I didn't ask them to. I did slowly. Each step was narrower than the last. Each one had a name carved into it. Some in Latin, some in Cyrillic, some just scratches. My name wasn't there, but I felt it coming. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became, until even my heartbeat felt muffled. The staircase ended in a corridor. The walls here were lined with mirrors, but none of them showed my reflection. They showed moments, images of the hallway, of my apartment, of me sleeping, me eating, me sitting on the floor whispering to someone who wasn't there. I stopped at one mirror. It showed me looking into it. Only, I hadn't looked yet. I leaned closer. My reflection blinked. I ran. The corridor twisted as I moved, the floor shifting from wood to concrete to something like flesh. The lights above flickered in impossible patterns. Morse code, a countdown, I didn't know. But the walls began to bleed. Not red. Not even liquid. More like leaking memory. I saw myself at age 6, lost in a supermarket. I saw my mother's face the day she left. I saw every forgotten fear I ever buried beneath convenience and distraction. They poured out of the walls like water from a cracked dam, and I felt myself thinning, forgetting. The further I ran, the less I knew why. I stopped at a door. It wasn't marked, but it throbbed. Like a wound. I opened it. Inside was 20F, but not the one I'd entered. This was the apartment as it must have looked in the 1960s. Floral wallpaper, a rotary phone, a velvet couch stained dark with time. On the far wall, a man sat in a rocking chair, still motionless. His eyes were hollow, not metaphorically. Literally, empty sockets that somehow tracked me as I entered. His mouth moved. No motion. I stepped closer. His hand lifted and pointed to a crack in the wall beside him. I should have turned around. Instead, I knelt and peered into the crack. Behind it, another eye stared back. Alive. Human, but terrified, it blinked rapidly, as if begging me to see it. I pulled back. The man in the chair had vanished. The room around me was crumbling. The wallpaper peeled in strips, revealing not drywall but more cracks. Cracks filled with whispering teeth. Yes, teeth, hundreds lining the spaces between walls, chattering like keys on a broken typewriter. They whispered my name, over and over. I covered my ears. It didn't help. The sound was inside my head. My thoughts weren't mine anymore. They were echoes, reruns of someone else's fear. I fell, not physically, psychologically. Time folded. I was outside again, in the hallway, in front of my door. 2D, everything looked normal. My cat meowed behind the door. A neighbor passed by and smiled. The hallway was warm. The light above 2F was bright. The door was closed. No mark. No darkness. No smell. I shook. My hands were bleeding from clawing at something. My face was wet. Not tears. Water. Cold, saltless water. I went inside. My apartment was clean, pristine, exactly how I left it, except the photographs were gone. All of them, and in their place on every surface, walls, fridge, bathroom, mirror, was a single phrase written in black ink. Yo kam baika kado arong. I collapsed onto the couch, slept for 16 hours. When I woke up, everything was still clean. No writing, no bleeding, no smell. I convinced myself I had a breakdown, that maybe I hallucinated the entire thing. That stress had finally snapped something inside me, so I went back to work. I cleaned. I bought groceries, normal things. The more I leaned into routine, the more the memory of 20F dulled, like a bad dream smoothed over by daylight. I even laughed again, once, at a dumb commercial. That felt like a miracle. But it didn't last. One night I woke up with a pressure on my chest. My cat wasn't in the apartment. The lights wouldn't turn on. The fridge was humming in reverse. And on the wall above my bed, in dripping strokes, were 4 words: no o yultitin. The hallway heard everything, but now it had a voice. Mine. I started avoiding mirrors. Not out of superstition, but because they started showing things they shouldn't. Not reflections. Scenes. Snapshots of things I hadn't lived yet. Me standing over a stranger's bed with a blank face. Me at the mailboxes, speaking to a neighbor who'd moved out weeks ago. Me holding something in my hand, dripping, though I couldn't make out what. I covered every reflective surface in my apartment: aluminum, glass, black screens, even the surface of the kettle. It didn't help. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw versions of myself doing things I couldn't explain. Things I didn't want to believe I was capable of. And the worst part was that they didn't seem like hallucinations. They felt like rehearsals. The apartment began to change in subtle ways. Outlets disappeared. Light switches flipped upside down. My bathroom mirror became smaller, narrower, as if shrinking away from me. One day, my kitchen window showed a street that wasn't mine. Cobblestones instead of pavement, gas lamps instead of LEDs. But when I looked away and back again, everything was normal. Almost. The sky always had a reddish tint now, permanent dusk even at noon. I tried to document everything, but the files never saved. I bought a new phone, new laptop, took videos, voice memos, screenshots. But the moment I went to replay or reopen anything, the files were corrupted. One video played back only static for 2 minutes, and in the last frame, my own face stared back at me, smiling but not my smile. Not even close, it was wider. Artificial, like it had learned how to smile by studying photographs of corpses. I stopped going to work. My boss called 3 times. I didn't answer. When I finally checked my voicemail, the messages were gone, replaced by one recording of silence followed by a slow, drawn-out inhale. I moved my mattress into the living room. I wanted to stay away from the bedroom. Something in there shifted in the night. Once, I found my pillowcase damp and the sheets tucked perfectly tight like a hospital bed. I never made my bed. And my cat, she never came back. I put up flyers for her around the neighborhood, desperate and ashamed. But no one called. One flyer disappeared the same day I posted it, torn off neatly like someone had needed it. The tenants started acting differently, those who were still there anyway. I saw Mr. Dunley from 30C in the stairwell just standing. Motionless. Eyes open, but not seeing. When I said his name, he blinked like waking from a long nap, then mumbled something about the weight shifting on the inside and hurried away. 2 days later, his apartment was boarded up from the outside. No explanation, just plywood and nails and a note that said, Daryar, Stiarciar al-ISS. But the boards were nailed from the inside. Curtis reappeared one morning, standing at the bottom of the stairs. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anything. Just stared up the steps, breathing hard, one hand gripping the rail like if he let go, he'd fall into something deeper than the floor. I called out. He didn't answer. When I stepped toward him, he whispered, "Thee shouldn't have let it cross floors." I asked what he meant, but he just shook his head violently and muttered, "Not again. Not this time. Not me." Then he ran. I haven't seen him since. I started locking every door and window in the apartment, even internal ones. I jammed chairs under handles, nailed wood across the bathroom door, and even sealed the closet shut with duct tape. But every night, something changed position. The chair would be a few inches off. The tape on the closet would be peeled back. Not torn. Peeled, like whoever opened it had time. And precision. I set up a motion-activated alarm. One of those cheap Keegan models you stick to doors. It went off every night at exactly 3:12 a.m., and each time I turned it off, the batteries were drained. It was around then I began hearing my own voice. Not inside my head, outside. Through vents. Through walls. Through the drain in the kitchen sink. It never said anything urgent or scary. Just phrases I recognized. Things I had actually said, recorded and played back in perfect mimicry. Once, it repeated something I whispered to myself during a panic attack. "You're not real. You're not real. You're not real," over and over. Another time, it sang a lullaby my mother used to hum. I hadn't heard it in 20 years. One night, I walked past 20F and saw the door was wide open. No shadow flickering light. Just open. I should have run. I should have slammed my own door and nailed it shut. But instead, I stepped closer, peered inside. It wasn't the same apartment. It was a hallway now. A different one. Long. Endless. Lined with mirrors on one side and blank wooden doors on the other. No hinges. No knobs. Just wood. And in every mirror, I saw a different version of me. Some younger. Some older. Some with scars I didn't recognize. Some with mouths soon shut. One walked toward me, mimicking my exact steps, only a beat behind. I blinked, and he was gone. I turned and left. But when I got back to my apartment, it wasn't my door. It was 20F. Again, my key didn't work. I kicked it in, but inside it was mine. All my things. My smell. My food on the counter. But on the table sat a folder I didn't own. Inside were documents, photos, every tenant from my floor. Past and present. Some cross-circled. Some with words like "Puf't," "Opine," or "and." I found my name at the bottom, not crossed out, just underlined. Beneath it was a single sentence, "OBSR VADIO PA." I dropped the folder and backed into the kitchen. The lights flickered. My own reflection smiled in the microwave. That night, I dreamed I was behind the walls, not stuck, volunteering. I watched others through pinholes. Listened to them breathe, eat, sleep. I took notes, laughed when they cried. Screamed when they were silent. It felt right. I woke up covered in dust and insulation, curled inside the crawl space behind my closet wall. I had clawed my way in from the inside. My fingernails were gone. I didn't scream. I couldn't anymore. Something had changed in me. Something had arrived. That evening, 20F was bricked up. Not boarded, bricked. Fresh mortar, still drying. No one did it. No trucks, no workers. Just a wall where a door had been. I asked around. Everyone claimed it had always been that way. I showed them photos. They said I edited them. I told them about the sound, the mirror hallway, the documents. No one believed me until Mrs. Lang from 40B went missing, until the smell returned, until someone started knocking on every door, one by one. Every night at 3:12 a.m., 3 knocks, silence, then a voice, not mine this time, yours. I stopped counting days, whatever rhythm the world used to have. The natural tug between sleep and wake, hunger and satiety, dawn and dusk. It vanished. The apartment pulsed with a different kind of time now, something circular and disjointed. Mornings blurred into nights without transition. Sometimes the sun rose twice in one day. Sometimes it didn't rise at all. The clocks stopped keeping time. Every one of them, digital and analog alike, froze at 3:12. I smashed them all, one by one. But each time I did, the fragments rearranged themselves overnight, forming words on the floor or across my walls. One morning I woke to the kitchen tiles spelling out, "Stilo UUSDI." It wasn't just the apartment anymore. The rest of the building began shifting. Walls stretched longer. Doors changed colors overnight. The floor numbers on the stairwell went from numerical to symbols. I went up to the 5th floor once and found the hallway looping. Door 5A, then 5B, then 5A again. I walked for what felt like an hour and always came back to my own footprint smudges. The air felt thinner there. My ears rang with a pitch I couldn't describe, something between a scream and static. I left a coat hanging on a doorknob to mark where I started. Came back 5 minutes later and found a noose tied with its sleeves hanging from the ceiling. I never went back to that floor. The building was becoming a body. I felt it in the walls. The way the pipes exhaled like lungs. The electrical hum that synchronized with my heartbeat. The way the elevator doors opened on their own whenever I passed. Never to the floor I wanted, but always to something I remembered. The first time I wrote it, it took me to the lobby. The second time, it took me to a room I hadn't seen since childhood. My old bedroom recreated in terrifying detail. Same bed sheets. Same cracked globe on the desk. Even the poster of that astronaut I used to think was watching me. But the moment I stepped off the elevator, the door slammed shut and vanished. No call button. No panel. No seams. Just 4 walls and the ghost of everything I tried to forget. A voice came through the vent in that room. Low, clipped. Mine. Make room. It whispered again and until I began tearing at the walls with my hands. My fingers bled. My nails broke. But I kept digging. Not because I believed I could escape, but because I believed I was supposed to. I wasn't let in to visit. I was let in to expand it. Feed it. Every scrape I made, the room grew wider. Every breath I took, the ceiling rose an inch. I passed out eventually. Woke up back in 2D, door wide open. And in the hallway, written in ash across the floor, was a map of the entire building, with one room circled. No floor indicated. No number. Just a black X and a word beside it. EX. I stared at that map for hours, memorizing it. Burning the twists and angles into my brain, I thought I could find it. That maybe, just maybe, there was a way out, some hidden corridor or basement the architects never intended to reveal. I packed supplies, flashlight, protein bars, a flask of water, a knife. Wrote a note and taped it to my door in case I never returned. It said, "If someone finds this, don't go looking. Seal the floor. Burn what's left. Tell no one." And below it, in red ink I don't remember writing, "Don't trust the one in your voice." I followed the map. The building resisted. Stairwells collapsed into storage rooms. Doors led to closets until they didn't. I went down a hallway that split like a Y. Right side was lined with doors, left side with windows. I took the left. The windows didn't show outside. They showed my apartment as if it had been replicated and placed like a dollhouse behind each pane. I saw versions of myself inside. One brushing teeth with bloodied gums. One eating something unrecognizable with both hands. One staring directly at me, unmoving, eyes black, smile wide and cracked. I ran. The X was beneath the building. The basement stretched far longer than it should have. I counted 47 steps down before the stairs crumbled away into a slope of concrete and bone. Literal bone. Ribs embedded in walls. Finger bones lined up like molding. The floor was soft, spongy, as if walking on the skin of a sleeping beast. The smell was unbearable. Mold, rot, and something synthetic like burnt hair and chemicals. I pushed through it all, guided only by the memory of that map and the hum that grew louder with every step. At the bottom was a door. I run. Ancient, covered in scratches, hundreds of them layered like veins. In the center, a handle, not a knob, a hand. Severed. Perfectly preserved, its fingers curled into a beckoning gesture. I hesitated. It twitched. I opened it. The room was spherical. Massive, walls lined with what I can only describe as archives. Rows and rows of shelves filled not with books but with jars. Inside each jar a voice. Not a vocal cord, not a speaker, just the sound. Tangible, alive, screaming or whispering or humming lullabies. One shelf had my name. 20 jars. I picked one up. It vibrated. I opened it. I was 10, crying under a blanket after my dad slammed the door. The voice was mine, but young, cracked and broken. The sound filled the room, echoing until I dropped it and it shattered. The sound didn't stop, it multiplied. My childhood terror replayed in 1,000 tones, layering over each other like a chore of regret. I dropped to my knees. Something moved above me, a shape, massive, unformed, watching. Its body was made of the hallway, long, thin, bending in ways no human spine could. Its head was a doorframe, its limbs stair rails. It didn't speak, it breathed, inhaled me into itself. I felt my memories being picked apart, rearranged, filed into jars and shelves as if I'd always belonged here. I tried to scream. It used my voice against me. "You open the door," it said. "No, be the key." Then it vanished. I woke up in 2D, but not 2D. Everything was reversed. The layout, the furniture, even the scratches on the floor. The windows looked out to nothing. Just gray fog. My skin itched with the pressure of not being alone. My thoughts weren't mine anymore. They echoed. Repeated. Whenever I tried to speak, my words looped back half a second too late, like someone was playing them behind a wall. I ran to the hallway. It was endless now. Apartment doors stretched for miles, all labeled 20FF, all slightly ajar. I opened one. Inside was me, sitting, smiling, holding a jar, my voice inside. He stood, walked toward me, held it out, and said, "You left the door open too long. Now there's more than one of me, and we're all waiting. There's no sunrise here. Not anymore. Just a slow transition from black to a kind of colorless gray, like the sky forgot how to breathe a light. I've walked these hallways more times than I can count, but the math doesn't hold. I passed doors I've never seen and doors I swear I was born behind. I've opened some. I've learned not to open others. Every apartment is 20F now. Every door clicks softly when I near, like a lock preparing itself, asking me in its own way, 'Are you ready this time?' But nothing prepares you for what follows. The building isn't static, it feeds. It listens. It learns. And now it remembers me better than I remember myself. Sometimes I catch glimpses of lives I never lived. Photos on walls that show me in families I never had, memories pressed into wallpaper like flowers flattened between books. Once I found a scrapbook inside an armoire. Every page was a year of my life, only the years were wrong. Photos of me in the 1950s, a birthday cake with 7 candles from a party I never had. My face ageless, identical, standing beside people I've never met, each photo carefully dated, each caption handwritten in familiar script. He stayed this time. He stayed this time. He stayed this time. I started leaving myself notes, tucking them into cracks in the wall, beneath baseboards, behind light switch covers. Little reminders of who I was. Who I thought I was, but the building finds them, alters them. Once I found a note I'd written hours before, "I am real. This is not home." When I found it again, it read, "I was real. This is home now." Same paper, same handwriting, different truth. I no longer trust my reflection, not because it does anything violent, but because it watches, with patience, like it knows the outcome and is merely waiting for me to catch up. Sometimes it blinks when I don't. Sometimes it mouths things I'm too scared to understand. One night it held up its hand and showed me a key. My reflection, not me. And as it opened its mouth, I heard every door on the floor unlock at once. That's when I realized the building had given up on subtlety. It wanted to be seen, it wanted to be known. And worst of all, it wanted to be chosen. The others are still here. I don't see them all at once, but I feel them in the walls. The ones who stayed. The ones who opened the door before me. The ones who never left. I hear them whispering in the vents, trading stories of their last thoughts. Some wail, others laugh. A few just breathe in unison, trying to remember what silence felt like. We are not ghosts. We are archives, snapshots stored in mold and drywall, cataloged by something older than the building itself. Something that predates brick and language and even memory. The room they showed me last week, I think it was meant to be my new home. It was my apartment, recreated in perfect detail. Every scuff mark, every worn cushion, every fork in its rightful drawer. But on the table, there was a frame I didn't recognize. A photo of me standing outside the building, smiling, confident, hands in pockets like I owned the world. And below it, a plaque, curator of 47, cycle complete. I didn't understand what it meant, not then. Not until the elevator arrived. I hadn't called it. I didn't press a button. It just opened. Inside was a girl I didn't know. But she knew me. She looked at me like you look at a tour guide, like someone who's supposed to explain what happens next. She held a suitcase. Her expression was uncertain but hopeful. She stepped out, smiled nervously, and said, "It's my first apartment." The realization hit like a collapsing ceiling. I wasn't trapped. I was initiated. This was the cycle. This is how it chooses. It lures, tests, consumes, and replaces. I am the welcome party now. And so I played my part. I smiled. I showed her where the laundry room was. I pointed out the vending machine that only accepts exact change. I warned her the water takes time to heat up and that the radiators groan during storms. She laughed. She thanked me. She asked if anyone lived in 20F. I smiled again. I said, "No one right now." That night, I returned to my apartment. My real one, or the version the building wants me to believe is real. On my nightstand was a jar. Glass, no lid. Inside, the sound of her voice. Laughing. Not recorded. Contained, I didn't touch it. I couldn't. It vibrated when I got close. Like it knew who I was becoming. The hallway now shifts when I walk it, walls part. Doors lean in. The building accepts me. Maybe even respects me. I no longer need keys. I touch a knob, and it turns. I blink, and the lights obey. I whisper, and something listens with interest. Not affection, not cruelty. Just curiosity. I have become part of the architecture, and with that comes a duty. I monitor new arrivals. I watch them through peepholes, through wall slits, through vents that only I know exist. I take notes. I send them messages when it's time. Not everyone answers. Some leave before the process completes. But those who stay, I watch them change. Their patterns shift. They start drawing maps they don't remember drawing. They start dreaming of staircases that never existed. They stop recognizing their own handwriting, and eventually they open the door to 20F. Always 20F. Always the invitation. Sometimes I warn them. Sometimes I don't. It depends on how long they listen. The building feeds on attention. It grows stronger with belief. The more you notice it, the more you give it shape. A shadow only exists because there is light to defy, and that's what we are. The flicker before the dark, the breath before the silence, the memory before it is archived. There are rules now. New tenants must never speak of 2F. Mirrors are covered after midnight. If the lights flicker at 3:12, remain still. If you hear your voice from behind the wall, do not answer. If a photo appears on your fridge that you did not take, burn it. Quickly. And if someone knocks 3 times on your door, followed by silence, do not open it. Unless it's me, because I'm the curator now. I'm the voice in the wall. I am the welcome. And when your time comes, I'll be there to show you the way. But don't worry, you won't remember. Not at first. Not until the hallway leans toward you. Not until your reflection begins to speak without you. Not until your cat refuses to cross the floor. And not until every door becomes 20F. But by then, you'll understand. By then, you'll be part of the building too. And like me, you'll learn to listen. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.